Well, Jane, thank you. And can I say that it is a huge, huge privilege to be here at David Brown. I want to thank Stephen Watson. I want to thank all of you, members of staff, for having us here. I hope we're not going to contribute to too much low productivity today, but you can definitely blame us for that. But it's great to be here because David Brown is a company I visited before. It's a brilliant company offering high-skill, high-value work. It offers great apprenticeships, 15 apprenticeships a year, and it's the kind of company that we want to see more of in our country. Now, the point of today is a chance for you all to ask me questions about the general election, about politics, about the things that are on your mind. If you'll allow me, before I answer your questions, I'm just going to say a few words about how I see this election and how I see the stakes for our country. It starts for me with some simple truths about who we need to be as a country. I think we need to be a country that rewards hard work again, whoever you are. And I'll tell you about some of the policies we're going to do to make that happen. I think if people work all the hours God sends, they should be able to meet the bills and bring up their family. So we'll provide 25 hours free childcare for all 3- and 4-year-olds so that work pays for parents. We'll freeze energy bills so they can only fall and can't rise. And we'll raise the minimum wage to £8 an hour. I think we need to be a country that supports our young people again, with good qualifications for all of our young people. That's why we're going to have a revolution in apprenticeships. A Labour government will say to our young people, if you get the grades, you'll get an apprenticeship. That will be a guarantee from a Labour government. And we'll work with good companies like David Brown to make that happen. We'll say to our young people who go to university that we'll make sure you aren't loaded down with a lifetime of debt, and we'll cut the tuition fee from £9,000 to £6,000. And I also think you need public services that you can rely on, and nothing is more important than our National Health Service, and I know that's true in this area in particular. That's why our plan provides for 20,000 more nurses, 8,000 more doctors, 5,000 more care workers and 3,000 more midwives. And it's a funded plan. We've set out how we're going to pay for it. Not from taxes on everyday people, not from more borrowing, but from a mansion tax on the most expensive homes above £2 million, by cracking down on tax avoidance, and that is a massive concern for people right across this country, and by getting money from the tobacco companies. I think our NHS is the most precious institution of our country, and we need to protect it and rescue it for the future. And our plan is also underpinned by cutting the deficit every year and balancing the books. So these are the questions for me at the heart of this election. But there is one question, one big question above all, and that's who our country works for. And you know, I think there's no greater symbol of an economy that doesn't work for many people than 0 hours contracts. Now, I think there'll be a lot of people here today who know people who are on 0 hours contracts. We have an epidemic of 0 hours contracts in our country. There's been a 20% increase in 0 hours contracts in the last year alone, undermining hard work, undermining living standards, undermining family life. Because if you don't know from 1 week to the next, or even from 1 day to the next, how many hours you're going to be doing, how can you have any security for you and your family? We've got to end the epidemic of 0 hours contracts. So today I can announce that in our first year of government after the election, Labour will pass a law that says if you are working regular hours, you will get a regular contract. A legal right that will apply to all workers after 12 weeks. To anyone on a 0 hours contract today, to anyone whose sons and daughters are on a 0 hours contract, and to anyone trying to raise a family on a 0 hours contract, I say something simple. You shouldn't be left at the beck and call of an employer who can ask the world of you but gives you no security in return. It's not fair, it's not good for business, and we'll put a stop to it. We've seen today there is a big choice in this election. You see, I believe that it's when working families succeed that Britain succeeds. The Conservatives believe that by looking after a few big firms and individuals at the top, everyone else will be okay. They won't end the exploitation of 0 hours contracts. We will. Because we know that security for working people is the bedrock of what makes Britain work. Less than a week ago, you may have heard the Prime Minister say that he couldn't live on a 0 hours contract. Well, I couldn't live on a 0 hours contract either. But I've just got a simple principle. If it's not good enough for us, then it's not good enough for you, and it's not good enough for Britain. And that's the way I want to run the country. You see, I believe in a country where there isn't one rule for the richest and most powerful and another rule for everybody else. I believe in a country where there's one rule for all. I think that's a basic principle of the British people. And that's the principle that I will apply if I'm Prime Minister. That's my chance to tell you what I think about the country and how I want to change the country. I'm going to now take questions from people. As I say, please do ask any questions you like. The difficult questions will go to Jane East, our parliamentary candidate, and the really difficult questions will go to Rachel Reeves, our Shadow Work and Pension Secretary. Who would like to begin? Yeah, I'll take this gentleman here in the purple, and then I'll take this gentleman. What's your name?
Charlie Beaumont.
Charlie, hi.
I'd like to know what you're going to do to try and control the energy companies' price increases and how they're regulated.
Well, it's a really important question, Charlie, and we are gonna take action. And let me tell you how. We're going to have an energy price freeze until 2017, so that prices can only fall and cannot rise. And we're going to do something else. Because all of us will know from our energy bills that what happens is when the wholesale price goes up, our bills go up straight away, and when the wholesale price falls, our bills never seem to come down. Over the last year, wholesale prices have gone down by 20%, and energy prices, retail prices, have gone down by between 1% and 5%. And by the way, this is an issue not just for families, it's an issue for businesses. I'm sure it's an issue here at David Brown. These costs are a big, big cost for many businesses. So we're going to do something else. We're going to give the regulator the power this winter to pass on price cuts to families and to businesses. It's a simple principle. You know, if the wholesale price has gone down, the regulator should be able to cut prices for families and businesses because those price cuts should be passed on. And there was a question here from Sean.
Yeah, my question is, I've been listening to NHS and how you're talking there. I have a big concern for NHS. We all, the MPs that we have, how many do have private healthcare in all the parties? So with that, obviously, and then how serious would they be if they've got so many having private healthcare? Would they be about looking after the NHS? My concern is not many of us working people down here have private healthcare.
Well, not me and not anyone I know in terms of the private healthcare. But look, the key thing, isn't it, is to improve the NHS. And I think that's what people are worried about. Because what's happened on the NHS is that you're waiting longer in A&E, you're waiting longer to get your test results, you're waiting longer to get an operation, and this is the thing about what David Cameron's plan is, because he wants to have spending cuts double next year what they've been in the last 5 years, and I shudder to think what that would mean for our National Health Service. So that's why we've got a plan to turn it around. But the thing about our plan, and I really want to say this to people, is that I'm telling you what we can do. Everything we've set out, we're showing how it's paid for. Because you need to know, just like the business here, you need to know how it's paid for. And we set that out with our NHS. And the other thing I'll say, because you asked about the private sector, look, we do want to reverse this tide of privatisation that we've seen in relation to the NHS. We say that the NHS is a preferred provider, and also that if you've got the private sector playing a role, you've got to limit the profits, because you can't have money flowing out of the NHS simply into the private sector and undermining the NHS. I think you've got to put patients before profits in the National Health Service. Now lots of people want to ask questions. There's a gentleman here.
That 0 hours contract, what's going to stop the employer saying we only need you for 11 weeks and then getting rid of you before the 12 weeks?
Well, we're going to make sure that there's legal mechanisms in place to stop that happening. You see, at the moment, you've got 92% of people who are on more than 12 weeks, 0 hours contracts. So the vast majority of people are on them week after week, month after month. And we've looked at what is the most effective way to stop employers gaming the system. And we're pretty sure this is the most effective way, because after the 11 or 12 weeks, the 12 weeks that you've done, we'll then be able to know how many hours you've been working, and then you'll have a right to a contract at that number of hours. So it's a kind of averaging out of the amount of time you've been working over that time. And look, I think there are lots of employers who will think, the vast majority actually think, who I talk to, say, look, we don't really touch that 0 hours thing because we don't think it's the right way to run a business, but we've got to really clamp down on those who are, if you like, exploiting the system and using these contracts. You got caught with it. Do you want to just tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, about what happened to you?
Well, I had 1 week, and then the next week they didn't want me. And then, so I had to give the job up, and then the week after they says, oh, Barry, you're coming back to work. I says, no, because I can't go to the council and say, you're not getting your rent this week because I haven't worked. You know what I mean? So I had to pay all my 4 weeks' rent, what they paid for me. And I had to pay some council tax, and I had to pay something else.
Is it Barry, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, look, the thing I'd say to Barry, and the thing I'd say to everybody, and the thing I'd say to the country is this very simple thing. I couldn't live on a 0 hours contract for exactly the thing that Barry just said, which is, how can you possibly plan your life, pay your bills, if you don't know whether you've got work the following week or the next week, or how many hours work it is? And so I challenge anyone who criticises us today, I challenge anyone in the Conservative Party or elsewhere in business to say, well, will you volunteer that you could live on a 0 hours contract? If you say you could live on a 0 hours contract, well, let's see you try. But I think the reality is that whether it's me or David Cameron or other people in our society, I don't think it provides any kind of security for you and your family.
The only people it works for is people who are living at home with their parents.
Exactly. It's a very, very small minority of people. Thanks for your question, Barry. Yeah, there's a gentleman here.
I know I don't look it, but I'm about to retire in this next.
What's your name,
years.
sir?
Dave Shuff.
Dave.
Yeah.
You don't look it, Dave.
No,
I didn't get there quite early enough, did I? Sorry about that.
Will I be better off under Labour or under Conservative this next 5 years, and for the rest of the pensioners?
When are you stopping, Dave? Or is that okay? Maybe I shouldn't ask.
No, you shouldn't ask that. No.
Okay, sorry. How long have you worked here, Dave?
I started in '67.
You started
here in '67.
My goodness, that's like 48 years. Is that right? 47 years.
Yeah.
You definitely don't look it.
Thanks very much.
Well, look. Let me tell you what we would do on the pension. So we'll protect the level of the basic state pension and make sure it goes up by 2.5%, or prices or earnings, whichever is higher. Secondly, we're going to protect the free bus pass and TV licence for pensioners. We have said that the winter fuel allowance will also be protected, but for incomes over £42,000, we'll take it away. It's one of the ways in which we can help get the deficit down. But let me say one other thing to you, and then come back. There's a really important thing, I think. It particularly is about people who are retiring, but it's about the whole country. And it goes back to the question I was asked about the NHS. I think the NHS is actually the bedrock of security for working for retired people, and indeed a proper care service. And I think that both of them are really creaking. And so our plan is about improving the care service and the NHS, because I think that's essential for our elderly.
I class myself as lucky because I know I'm going to retire when I'm 65. People younger than me, a lot of people here, they're having to work till they're 66, it's going on. Have you got a plan over the next 5 years? Because in the next 5 years, there'll be another few million people claiming state pension. The state pension, in my eyes, has got to go up, or age-wise, has got to go up. Are you going to wait until the last minute and tell these people that they've got to jump up 5 years, or is it going to be a gradual increase?
It's got to be done gradually, and it's got to be done with proper notice. Maybe, Rachel, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. When Lord Turner did a review for us when we were in government about pensions, he recommended that people got 10 years' notice of any change in their retirement date. When this government came in, they changed the retirement age for women in their late 50s with less than 5 years' notice. I don't think that's right, because you don't have time then to plan your finances and to make sure you've got that money for retirement. So we'll make sure that as the state pension age increases as people live longer, and that's a fantastic thing, that we give people that notice and time to prepare. We also support people being automatically enrolled into workplace pensions so that more people have that security of the state pension, yes, but also a private pension as well, so more people can retire with that security, knowing that they'll have an income they can afford to live on.
Okay, thanks very much, Dave. Let's take some more questions. Yep, there's a lady here. Hi. What's your name, sorry?
It's Abby.
Abby, hi.
Have you got any plans to raise the apprenticeship minimum hourly rate in line with the national standard minimum rate? Because I think it's important that apprentices receive a fairer salary.
What's your experience here?
I've been in apprenticeship, for 18 months.
You're on one at the moment, are you?
Not now, no.
And what do you do now at the firm?
I'm a trainee accountant.
Fantastic, congratulations. We do need to look at that because we've got an overall plan to raise the minimum wage, and we're going to look at the apprenticeship rate, which I know is very low, alongside that, and I think it's right that we do look at it. We've also got to make sure we work with businesses so we don't put them off taking people on as apprentices. But I think you're completely right. I mean, I think it's obviously a real struggle for lots of apprentices to live on the current level of the minimum. Thanks for your question. Let's take some more questions. Any questions behind me? Oh, yes, gentleman here. Steve.
What I'd like to know
Yeah.
is when the last government came in, they promised
Just put the microphone, yeah.
they promised to do something about the bankers. Now, to me, from what I see, the bankers are still paying themselves extraordinary amounts of money, massive bonuses, and nothing's happened. They're still being paid billions and billions of pounds in bonuses every year. Surely that money would be better spent on the NHS or pensions or something else. Are you, if you're getting government, prepared to do anything about the extraordinary wages that pay themselves?
Yes. You're right. You're totally right about this, Steve. And let me tell you two things that we're going to do. We're going to levy a tax on the bankers' bonuses and use it to put our young people back to work and guarantee every young person who's been out of work more than a year a job. And I think that's the right thing to do, and the way we're going to do it is by saying to employers, we'll pay the wages if you provide the training, and taxing the bankers' bonuses allows us to do that. And then earlier on, I mentioned the difference we're going to make on nursery education, 25 hours for 3 and 4 year olds. That's something like a £1,500 a year saving for working parents with 3 and 4 year olds. And that is going to be better for them, better for the country, and we're going to pay for it with a rise in the bank levy. So, look, I think you're totally right. There's a wider point I'd make, though. We've got to make sure the taxes are fair on the banks. We've also got to make sure the banks work for businesses. I mean, I still think that lots and lots of businesses around the country feel, look, the banks aren't really working for us. They may be working for themselves, but they're not working for us. That's why we've got to have proper competition on the high street. We've got to have a British investment bank, because the banks have got to see that their function is not simply a secure and successful financial services industry, but actually serving people. And so I totally agree with you. The job is absolutely not yet done, and it hasn't been done under this government. Let's take, yep, there's a gentleman here.
I just wanted to find out about your plans regarding new house buyers. What are your plans regarding those people who want to buy houses, especially students who just finished university or people who just want to buy that first house?
We've got to build. Look, we've got to build homes again in our country. And the reality is that we are simply not building enough homes. And we haven't been, and I'll be frank with you, we haven't been building enough homes as a country for a long time. And it was true under the last Labour government, it's been true under this government. It actually so happens that under this government, we've built fewer homes than at any time since the 1920s. And yet the demand is incredibly high. So what are we going to do? We've got a promise to build 200,000 homes a year by 2020, which will be the highest for a generation. And the way we're going to do it is a number of ways. First of all, we're going to stop those large developers sitting on land, because what they do is they sit on land and wait for it to accumulate in value, and then they don't build. And so we're going to give councils powers to say either use the land or lose the land, first of all. Secondly, we're going to make sure that when we do build homes, they actually go to local people. So we're going to say that in an area, when planning permission is granted, councils can set aside at least half of the houses for local people, not out-of-town buy-to-let landlords. Now, why is that going to make a difference to the number of houses being built? Well, I think people will be more likely to say yes to local homes if they are actually homes that will benefit the local community. Third thing I want to say to you, though, as well as building more homes, and maybe this is partly where your question was going, we've got to have a fair deal for those who rent in the private sector. I don't know whether there are people here who are renting their homes from private landlords, but the experience that people generally have in relation to private landlords is very, very mixed. There are some great private landlords, but there are some not so good private landlords. So we want to bring in 3-year tenancies for people who are renting from the private sector, to give people a security, much greater security than they have at the moment, and to have predictable rent changes within those 3 years. So that's our plan on housing, but we've got to build again, and we'll make sure it happens. Let's take another round. I'm going to take some media questions. I'm going to take Carl.
Hi, Carl Dillon from ITV News. On 0 hours contract, isn't the problem with this that after 12 weeks, employers will be faced with either giving someone a regular contract they might not be able to afford to give them, or just letting them go? And also, if you don't mind, how are you going to prepare for tomorrow night's leaders' debate?
On the first question, look, I don't accept that. You see, I think we've got to change the culture when it comes to the way that businesses who are relying on 0 hours contracts work, because the vast majority of businesses don't have their employees on 0 hours contracts. And businesses that have the majority of their employees on a 0 hours contract month after month, year after year, there's another way to do things. And that's what we've got to encourage. And frankly, it doesn't provide security for workers. It isn't the basis to plan. And it does go to the big choice of this election, Carl, because it does go to the view about how do we succeed as a country? Do we succeed? Do we compete on the basis of the insecurity of working people? Well, look, I don't believe that. And the Prime Minister takes that view. He thinks low pay, insecurity, that's the way we succeed in the world. I think the way we succeed is actually when working people succeed, and that is the choice. On the second question, the way I'm going to prepare for this debate is by coming to talk to good people here and to keep campaigning. And look, the thing I value about the debate is the chance to talk directly to the British people, as I'm doing today, about the things that matter to me and how I want to change the country. Lucy.
Lucy Manning, BBC News. Your plan for 0 hour contracts is just going to cost jobs, isn't it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because talk to the vast majority of businesses in our country. They're not relying on 0 hours contracts. They recognise that they need to give security to working people. And look, we've heard this debate before in our country. Why does this debate sound familiar? It sounds familiar because when we introduced a national minimum wage after the last general election, after the general election in 1997, people said that will cost jobs. People said we've got to pay people 50p an hour. Unless we pay people 50p an hour, we're not going to succeed as a country. Well, I say nonsense. I say that's nonsense. We can't be a country that has an epidemic of insecurity, hundreds of thousands of people who are on 0 hours contracts and who are unable to plan their lives. And my challenge to anybody challenging us today is tell me, can you live on a 0 hours contract? Because if you can't live on a 0 hours contract, if it's not good enough for you, then it shouldn't be good enough for the British people. Yeah.
100 business leaders have said that you are a threat to the economy. What do you say to them? Why do you think they have come out publicly and collectively against you?
Well, business leaders have come out today and say they want lower business taxes. And that doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that businesses want lower business taxes. I understand the reasons why businesses want lower business taxes. And we've actually got a plan to cut business taxes for small and medium-sized businesses because we think that's where the priority lies. But, it does also go to the wider choice at this election. You see, the Conservatives really believe that as long as a few corporations and individuals at the top are doing well, the wealth will magically trickle down to everybody else. I think we've tried that experiment over the last 5 years and it hasn't worked. And we've seen falling living standards and falling wages and insecurity at work. And I just have a different view about the way the country succeeds.
How did you feel when you read that letter?
I felt absolutely that it's the kind of thing you expect in a general election campaign, which is the Conservatives want to say that this is their view of the country. And let's have that debate. Let's have that debate about how our country succeeds. Because you see, I think the British people are thinking, well, look, this is a recovery that may have reached the City of London, but it's not reached me. And that's what we've got to change about this country. So let's have the argument about how we succeed as a nation. Do we succeed with a few corporations and individuals doing well, or do we succeed when working people succeed? That's my view, and I think that's the view of the British people as well. Let's take another, anyone else? Yep.
Mr. Miliband, if you form the next government...
What's your name? I'm sorry.
Michael Hitchbone.
What do you do, Michael?
I'm the engineering director.
Excellent.
If you formed the next government, you've previously announced that you would raise taxes for the mansion tax and the 50p rate will be reintroduced. What else would you plan to reintroduce?
Okay, well, on the tax plans that we've got, we've said there'll be no increase in value-added tax, because I think it's incredibly unfair tax. We've also said no increase in national insurance and no increase in the other rates of income tax, because I think it's really important that, and this is really important about our plans, the way we've decided to fund our plans is not on the basis of taxes from ordinary families, but fairer taxes. And so, you know, some people won't like the fact that we've got a tax on homes above £2 million. Some people won't like the fact that we're reintroducing the 50p tax rate for those earning over £150,000 a year. But look, I think that's the right choice for the country. And it's the right choice for the country because we've got to get the deficit down and we've got to fund the National Health Service. I just might say, just in passing, because you said you're head of engineering here, and you would know this more than me, I think one of the challenges our country faces, and you'll be very familiar with this, is actually having the skilled engineers we need as a country. And that's why we've got to invest in education. And you know, investing in education, I think that is absolutely the bedrock of a successful economy in the future. And having that revolution in vocational education, apprenticeships, and all of those things is essential for our economy to succeed. So, look, the most important thing about my program is we're showing where the money's coming from, and I think we're doing it in a fair way. Anyone else? Non-media questions. Anyone else from the... Yeah.
On your way out from the last comment,
Yeah.
you said that you can have it, there's nothing left. What are you going to do to persuade me that you're not going to do that again?
What we're going to show, Chris...
Yeah. In, basically.
Absolutely. Look, what we're going to show, Chris, and that's why I've been saying today, is where's the money coming from? Look, we're going to get the deficit down every year. We're going to balance the books. And we're going to show how we're going to do it. And that's why I answered the gentleman who asked the question about the top rate of income tax, because I think that's a fair choice to make. I don't think you can justify a £44,000 tax cut for every millionaire in the country when everyone else is paying more and when services are being cut. So we are going to get the deficit down. It will involve cuts in spending, but we're going to do it fairly, and we're going to make fair choices. And the decision you've got to make and everyone else has got to make is what's going to be in the interests of you and your family. Who's really going to stand up for you and your family on the things that matter, whether it's living standards or wages or energy bills or the National Health Service, and who's going to make the right choices. And obviously that's your decision. I think we're going to wind up there. I'm going to let Rachel say a couple of final words.
Well, can I say thank you to Stephen Watson and everyone here at David Brown for hosting us today. I think this has been great preparation for the TV debates tomorrow and great preparation for what faces you in 5 weeks' time, when I hope that Jane East will be the Member of Parliament for Colne Valley and Ed Miliband will be our Prime Minister. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks very much.